So I don't know if you guys remember, there was a teacher who came on here a couple years ago and basically was like, these kids can't read, they're illiterate. And everybody dragged him. They were like, oh, you're so wrong. How could you say that about kids? And I don't know why you guys dragged him because he was correct. And I'm going to tell you why. So, just a little bit of quick background. I am a fourth year med student. However, I am done with my rotations, and you don't get disbursements when you're not in school. Like, even though I'm waiting for match and waiting to graduate, I don't make any money. So I usually pick up substitute teaching jobs, and usually I get long-term gigs because they usually want someone who kind of knows what they're doing. And I'll get to this in a second, but a lot of teachers are burnt out. You can't get them to come back for anything. And I don't blame them. I'm honestly so happy to know that this time next year I will be a physician and I will never have to work with some of these kids ever again, truthfully. So because I'm a long-term sub, I actually have to, lesson plan, I have to teach, I grade these kids' papers, and I am a long-term sub for a 7th grade science class. And whenever that teacher said that some of these kids were reading at a 2nd or 3rd grade level, I couldn't understand it because I was like, there are, at least in this state, there are standardized tests, there are tests, there are grades. How are kids passing on and they cannot read? Until right now, that the class that I'm long term subbing for, I can honestly say that those kids are not literate. And I think when people hear illiterate, they think stupid. And I don't want it to sound like I'm calling them stupid. I'm saying there is a literacy crisis. These kids cannot read, they cannot write, okay? And it's 7th graders, okay? They are reading and writing at like first, 2nd grade level. And I honestly think for some of them, that's really generous. And I know you guys are going to be like, that's crazy. What about the standardized testing? What about grades? I'm going to tell you right now, whenever I was in school, I mean, like, you could not move on if you did not reach a certain level in those assessments. Nowadays, it's still the same, but instead of saying you can't move on if you don't reach a certain level, they have lowered the level that these kids need to reach to pass to almost nothing. I mean, I don't want to get into specifics, but for some of these state standardized tests, you only need like a 30 or 40% proficiency to be promoted on to the next grade level. And I think that's where the issue is. Like in the 7th grade, these kids can't read on their own. Like you have to read everything out loud to them. And I know you're wondering, oh, why is that a huge problem? But when you are in a class of like 20 or 25 kids and you have to keep stopping because like 3 or 4 of the kids literally cannot read the work that you put in front of them by themselves, it greatly decreases the productivity of the other students because now they can't move on, or now they're distracted because of the kid who's distracting them. So it's just like a really bad vicious cycle. And then on top of that, because I know some of these kids, they're gonna say they call them, they say that they're special ed, and that they need accommodations. And to me, accommodations is like if they're like, you don't even know what the accommodations are for at this point. I understand diagnosed reading or writing disabilities like dyslexia or dyscalculia, but some of these kids, they're just special ed because I honestly think once they determined that this kid never learned how to read, instead of doing the work to teach them to read, they just designated them as special ed, and then they do absolutely nothing in terms of accommodation, in my personal opinion, because accommodation is like, extra test time, or like, having someone come into the class and read their questions out for them. But the accommodations that I have personally seen throughout many of the schools that I've done these jobs in is like, the kid will get it like a 20 on their assignment, and the school is just like, just bump it up to a 70 so that they pass. That's not an accommodation. That is literally giving them a grade, especially when there are kids who they're not the strongest students, but they are earning, like those 70, 75s, which is passing, but they're earning it. So at least you know that they're proficient and that they can read. And you're saying that those kids are on the same level as kids who can't spell words like see or saw or land, like just really basic 4-letter words that you should have mastered, by the end of elementary school. And I think what's worse is when teachers point this out, parents are like, you're the ones who are supposed to teach our kids. Like, we send them to school so that you can teach them. And I agree with that. The problem is your kids don't want to learn, and anytime someone gets on to them so that they can learn, it's a problem. Like, you ask a kid to put their phone away, they get mad at you. You're in the middle of lecturing and you're on your phone, But then in like 10 minutes, you're going to come up and ask me something that I literally just explained that you would have understood if you were paying attention to me and like not on your phone. And I also think that's the other issue is all of these kids are like hyper online. Some of these kids who can't read, you look at their computers, because the district I'm in, they give them tablets. They can't look things up for themselves. If I ask them to look up now, like, what is a cell, they literally are like, how do I look that up? Like, they don't know to just go, like, how to look things up through Google, through Wikipedia. They don't know how to do that anymore. But they can all play, they're on like level 100 of Minecraft. I don't know how Minecraft and Roblox work, but like they are like proficient gamers, you know, like proficient texters. Like they can look up the words to really bad songs. You don't know how to spell, you know, apple, but you can spell out every curse word and slur known to man. I mean, it's just like, I don't understand. And I think the problem is like parents these days, honestly, I'm gonna be very honest, like they don't care about the outcomes of their kids. Like when I was younger, my mom is a high school pre-AP biology teacher. So during the summers, me and my siblings, we would go to the library, we would get summer reading. When we would get homework, our mom would actually sit down and like make us do it. And she checked our homework up until she couldn't anymore. Like even though she's an AP bio teacher, like whenever I was in calculus, she wasn't checking that. She was just kind of like, at this point, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But those formative years, like I honestly think like kindergarten through sixth grade, you as a parent should be able to check your child's work. But I think that is the issue. Is I think the reason some of these kids are illiterate is because, I hate to say it, some of you parents are also illiterate, and so it's okay that your child can't read because you feel like I can't read and I'm making it. And the thing is, you might be able to read like what you might be able to read this much, so your child can only read that much. And I honestly shudder to think the kinds of, you know, contributions to society some of these kids will be able to make one day, because I'm like, if you literally cannot read, you know, a four-letter word, you can't even work a minimum wage job in my opinion, but you guys are giving them diplomas saying that they've reached this level of proficiency in like reading, writing, math, science, all these things, and I can tell you they have not. And it really frightens me because these are people that you guys want to send out into the real world to be real adults, and they don't know how to do anything. Like right now we're doing energy through ecosystems, and I asked them, and we did a concept of recycling. So I asked them, you know, to Google the life cycle of like a cardboard box to see like the recycling journey. It's a simple Google search, so you can look at the images and just see, you know, from tree to cardboard box to like whatever, all around. I almost 60% of my kids could not do this assignment without heavy supervision on my part, and it's scary. So I don't know. This has just like really been an eye-opening experience for me. I don't know if it's because like all through my schooling, you know, I was always like a pre-AP, AP kid. I went to like a top 20 university, you know, like I have a master's degree, and now I have multiple masters, and now I'm in med school about to graduate. So I was never like in the regular classes. So I don't know if this was like a normal thing, because even my friends who were like in regular classes when I was in high school, like they could pick up a book and read it. These kids cannot pick up a book and read it. You tell them a word, you ask them to look it up in the dictionary, they can't even spell it to look it up in the dictionary. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? And I'm running out of time on this little rant, but I can't help but notice the rise in conservatism with the decline of education, because people who can't read can't get informed about their rights, right? They can't get informed about the things that are happening to them. They just listen to whatever is parroted to them. And honestly, the other day I logged onto YouTube on like one of the kids' computers just so I could show them how to look something up on YouTube, and they weren't logged in or anything. The entire YouTube like front screen was like all like kind of conservative, like red pilled esque videos. And so I'm just wondering, like, are you guys making these kids illiterate for a reason? Like, so that they can't read up on their own rights? Like, I don't know. But I do know that y'all's kids can't read. Like, you guys need to open a book with them in the evenings, maybe, instead of like letting them scroll on here. Like, it's getting scary.